Bueno Days is a tool that teleports minds into positive states of confusion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is October 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, October 3rd, and I'd like to start off today's podcast, today's podcito, with an appreciation because, man, this October weather really came in at a much needed place, man. It was too dang hot. Isn't that right? It was too dang hot. I'm here with my co-anchor, Catalea. Say hi, Catalea. Hello. Uba. Uba uba. Uda buda buda. And so I'm testing out a couple things. I want to look at the audio, see how it's working here. And I need to test out these batteries again. They're gonna die on me. But I wonder what these. I've got Mart checking too. And then off. So hope you guys are hearing me okay. And oh, I got my branch manager out here, El Tigre, doing her thing with a big ass tree branch, to say the least. Isn't that right? Now, so one thing I'm still testing out. Hello, bonjour, hola, ça va, bienvenido, aloha. I'm kind of running out. Ohio. So, welcome, everyone. All languages, all cultures, all people. I am here with my co-caster, Catalea. Catalea, say hi. We're going to say hi, Catalea. We're going to say, Catalea. Hello. And welcome. It's another beautiful day today. I want to say it again. Just, put out a note of thankfulness again to the universe, to the world, right? Got to start your days off with positive affirmations. They don't always have to be positive, but it's always good to state intention. So I think with that in mind, we want to do today's podcast about intentions. And what better way to start that conversation? I guess here it's a monologue, unless my little girl's gonna pitch in. No? Just me? Doing all the legwork? Okay. With what I want to get out of being a guest here on the Podcito. So I know for me, public speaking is always kind of a anxiety-inducing. It's you really have to think about your language, your words when you're actually running one of these podcasts. I know a lot of people enjoy free form, free flow, free form. The beauty about this stuff is that we can always go back and cut it, right? So let's start with it. Hey, bud. Oh, I was just saying hello to the podcast. Would you like to say hi? The podcast, remember we were listening to John and Alex in the car. So, what's your name, bud? You speaking to the mic? This is a mic. It looks like a person, but say hi to Podcito. Always shy on the mic. What's up? You're gonna let Catalea say, get there first before you, Lolo? Yeah? Hey, I left your homework over on the table. Okay. And so, I know I said I wanted to start this podcast with intentions, but, maybe practicing the number 7, and then the list of words, either out, and whatever you want to draw. So, I know I said I wanted to start off this podcast about stating intentions, and for all of you listeners out there, I definitely recommend that. Making sure you're staying hydrated, getting outside for a couple of minutes a day. That's what I'm really enjoying about this. Another thing I'm thankful for and grateful for out here, apart from my beautiful family, is this really, oh my goodness, clarion? It's really calming weather that we've got. It's even a sunny day, not a cloud in sight, and there's a nice cool breeze happening. It's like maybe low 80s. It feels great. So just out here enjoying the bueno days as we are live on air with Lucas and Catalea and Lorenzo if he decides to show back up here. But homework calls. God. I don't remember doing homework always so early on. So I've got a 5-year-old, or he's going to be turning 5. Shout out October 27th. But yeah, like kindergarten homework. I'm not sure if anybody else kind of recalls that, or at least like workbooks. Even in that regard. I actually don't remember having a structure like that until maybe moving to Florida for me. That was in 3rd grade. Before that, yeah. Before that, I don't think I really remember. There were summer writing, right? Did you guys? I don't know if you guys remember ever having to do not a book report, but like what you did over the summer. I seem to remember having those stories, right? Right? You swallowed it? Nah, she swallowed it. Gotta let those sneezes go, Let 'em out. Let 'em out. Let 'em out. All adult boys yelling. But yeah, I remember, 2nd, 3rd grade. I probably did have homework, and it was just like something, and they never really stood out to me. But I do remember summer writing, so that makes more sense if they were doing that in addition to also having homework, right? So, what can we talk about here? Man, I love to, share good music, good movies, books we've been reading lately. I know that Catalea is a big fan of I Love You This Much. I love you this much. Yeah. Lorenzo's getting big on. We've got this Marvel Avengers kind of storybook where it's a bunch of different chapters, little short stories. God, that thing puts me to sleep. Ugh. But George and Martha is a serious classic. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's about these 2 hippos who are best friends, BFFL. They just get in all kinds of shenanigans. We're reading. I've been listening to this Eckhart Tolle. What is it? Embracing the Now, I believe it's called. It's a book of his, but you can just, hop into any variety of streaming services. I'm sure have it. I listen to it on YouTube. But yeah, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. And been reading. What is our book, Kat? Is it Mycelial Networks? It's this book on mushrooms, on fungi. Well, namely, it's about the role that fungi plays in our natural world, right? So, where would evolution be in the context of plants taking that much longer to evolve and develop themselves on a terrestrial life? You have a variety of challenges you have to face when you're moving from aquatic, wet, low, less sufficient oxygen transport systems, interchanges happening in underwater as algae, as aquatic plants, versus the fact that most plants were not able to retain water on land, so they're drying up, and fungi, specifically lichens, which are a pretty radical organism. It's a combination symbiotic relationship between plants and fungus, and specifically assisting with water retention. There are certain physical cellular structures that fungi have that were not present in algae and earlier plants. There are, I shouldn't say algae because algae is not actually a plant. Well, depends. We use algae to describe any variety of aquatic green plant thing, right? But a lot of them are, um, they can be molds. Not molds. That would be a fungus. They tend, but a lot of algae that we think of are also commonly referred to as protists. Single cellular but colonial organisms that aren't actually plants, right? And yeah, they might be capable of photosynthesis, but that's not exclusive to plants. Now, it was certain root systems, right, weren't were co-evolved with fungus before plants were really able to take form. Um, uh, there's this concept, not this concept, but there's this process of transport in fungal root systems. So you'll have mycelial networks, these ever expanding, branching out chains, links. Hey, bud. What was that? These chain links of fungus growing underground and interfacing with plant root systems. So what is discovered is that certain, let's say, chemicals and minerals and water are transported across root systems to other plants, or from one area to a plant root itself. So you'll have phosphorus, right, which all plants need to grow. And certain species of fungus will not only select other species of plants, maybe ones that they're more closely co-evolved with, but they will also it's hard to say actively choose because we don't really understand the mechanism. But what is observed is the withholding of phosphorus from less successful plants, or deciding, or not even that, they literally use supply and demand, right? So it's like thinking of these networks in terms of economics and like supply chain economics, where you'll have high prices for high scarcity items. The lower the supply, the higher the demand, the more you're able to benefit from that commercial exchange. Fungus do the same thing. And they'll actually like withhold certain chemicals. They'll withhold water from areas within plant networks, within plants' root systems that are dehydrated. And I'd have to read it to get the exact. There was a really interesting paragraph in there, but gosh, I really need to remember the name of that book so I can share it on the Podcito. I don't know. I think we need to scratch this and start over because I'm just front page. I guess you wouldn't call them pages. It's also weird just talking to yourself, like out loud. We have, our internal conversations, our internal consciousness, observing the thinker, right? That's one of Eckhart Tolle's is, I think, like literally the first chapter. He talks about observing the listener, and this sort of the concept of you have this ever-present, ever-flowing consciousness, right? Your internal thoughts and how they can turn judgmental, critical, negative, driving, creating anxiety. And if you find yourself overwhelmed by that kind of internal thought process, this technique of observing the listener, observing the thinker, not the listener. We're the listener. So observing the thinker is that yourself, your own present consciousness, is actually separate from, it's a different entity from this other more critical, this kind of flowing ego, if however it's identified. But that thought process itself is actually we think of it as ourself. Your It's very easy to think of it as yourself. Like, that's just, oh, this is me, my internal, this is how my mind really thinks. The idea that when you're not acting like yourself, when you're the presence of mind to separate yourself from that, and how that relates to people dealing with anxiety, people dealing with depression, people who aren't who are judgmental, self-critical, all these negativities that we bring into our lives. Well, the purpose of self-help and self-rationalization here is not to disregard that entity. It exists. And trying to actively combat it might end up making your situation worse. But the process of training yourself to listen to this other self, to listen to this other body, this thinker, and actively separate yourself from making those immediate judgments or saying, oh, that's stupid, don't think that, or why didn't I wake up earlier today, or shit, man, I was supposed to run that errand, what have you. And at least this is how I'm interpreting it for myself, obviously, right? So as Mr. Tolle is narrating, you're interpreting and analyzing and adding in your own internal criticism, right? Actively, I was probably being a pretty uninformed listener and not actually taking the lesson at hand, and instead I was applying my own judgment to it, my own criticism to it, right? So it's the act of training yourself to listen, to flow without criticizing, and in doing that, you're better able to engage and learn from and understand your own self. One thing that I've always found fascinating, and something I also struggle with, is when we think about how yourself lives your life, and how other people separate from you are also living their life, and how everyone is different, but understanding actually those differences and how that relates to how people truly live their lives. There's a commonly, I wouldn't say commonly, but there's a fairly commonly referenced idea that like 30 to 40% of the population does not have an inner monologue, an inner thought process. And so, when you first hear that, and if you're one of these people who has an internal thought process or thinks they have internal thought process, right? How do we really know? How do we really understand how complex our own internal rationalizing is when we have only our own frame of reference to apply that knowledge? It's, again, I'm rambling. Been a good little 20-minute session, and probably, definitely going to have to edit this down. So I want to take a minute to say goodbye. Kat, she's getting a little hungry, a little fussy, so let's go do that. And hopefully, ladies and gents, and in between and outside the box, I will catch up with you later. Bye. Nice.